Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your latest source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and just before we start today, we do have a bit of a mic issue on my dad's end. Just some stuff going on with technical difficulties, so sorry if the audio quality is a little different than usual, but we think it'll still be very solid, and the analysis will hopefully make up for it. But, Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm holed up here in San Francisco.
Yep. And watching the Packers get a win on a Sunday afternoon.
Watching the Packers get a win.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we can ask for, right?
Yes. Just a win today was all we could ask for.
Yes. If you didn't know, the Packers this afternoon beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa by a score of 14-12, coming down to the very last play, essentially. About as close as you can get, and we are here today to break it down for you. We are also, you can find us on Twitter. Just before we get started, we want to plug some things. Find us on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet a lot of Packers news and notes and what our thoughts on that news and notes are, so come give us a follow at FatherSonPacker, like I said before. And then on YouTube, all of our podcasts can also be found at FatherSonPackers Podcast. Give us a subscribe. You know, really help us grow our base. We'd really appreciate it. But, Dad, you ready to jump into it?
Sure. We're ready to get going and give our thoughts and whatever analysis we've had so far.
Whatever we can, whatever we're qualified to do, which isn't much, but
what other information we can extract from today's mess?
Yes, but we always like to start with, we do these breakdowns after every game. We always like to start with our gut reactions before we really dive into the deep stuff. Dad, what were your gut reactions from this game?
So overall, my kind of big picture is that an ugly win is better than a pretty loss for
Amen.
The final outcome. By the end of the season, this is going to be a really important win and something I feel like we needed to get back on schedule for the final standings after that bad first week. There's a big difference in likelihood of making the playoffs if you're 2-1 versus 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is essentially a stolen win in some respects against a good team on the road is a really high value win. And so that part I'm happy about.
Yeah, my gut check time, as we like to call this segment, is kind of in line with what you said. It's hard to win on the road. It's hard for the Packers to win in Florida. It's hard to win on the road versus playoff teams in Florida. So I would say, results-wise, this is awesome. This is going to be very important at the end of the year. It's great to get a win. It's hard to get these wins versus good teams. So results-wise, A+. But I would say, gut reaction-wise, the process of how they got to this win leaves me a little bit worried. And that's something we will kind of talk about going forward when we get into our more deeper analyses of this game. But let's start with a quick injury report. We do have a couple things that we want to note. Jair Alexander left this game very early, almost in the first drive of the game, with a groin injury and did not return. Matt LaFleur said he was in good spirits in the locker room after the game, so hopefully he doesn't miss too much time. And Ryan Wood spoke to him after the game, and Jair told him that he felt his groin kind of pull a little bit on the first play of the game, but Jair did say, quote, "I'll be all right. I feel good." So hopefully not missing much time there. Dad, you got any thoughts on that one?
For the Jair?
Yeah, for Jair. I feel like that's probably the biggest.
That was the most worrisome one. I think probably had the biggest impact on the game as the game went on. I think that people filled in for him pretty admirably, but to be missing our number one cover corner is never easy. So we're hoping this is very short term.
Yeah, and I think at least what we can draw out of it is it's not too major. I think it would be a bit more doom and gloom if it was a really major injury. I would be surprised if he doesn't miss time, just given how the Packers treat injuries, but no doom and gloom yet, at least.
Yeah, these are the kind of conditions that are just really ripe for some kind of pulled muscle.
Yeah, so if you guys didn't know, it was about 95 degrees and crazy humidity because it was Tampa. And it was, you could tell the players were getting affected. Players were vomiting on the sideline. Alan Lazard threw up after his touchdown. Players were cramping up for both teams. It was a bit of a mess out there. And that kind of leads into our next injury. Josh Myers had to leave the game near the end of the game with cramps, and I believe did not return. According to Wes Hodkiewicz, it was just cramping, though. So you hope that that doesn't...
really good news. I couldn't quite tell what they were working on with him. I was afraid I wasn't sure if they were, because of the angle of the camera, whether they were looking at his ankle or testing his knee.
And he dealt with a knee injury last year, so that would be the worst case scenario. It was a little hard
to tell what they were working on there. So I was a little worried they were stress testing his knee from the view they gave. But so if they're just stretching out his toes because of his cramping, that would actually be really almost best case scenario for something that would make him leave the field but not be long term.
Yeah, and then another piece of the injury report is David Bakhtiari was active today and played. He played every other series. Him and Yash Nyman switched off, which is something that we'll probably delve a bit deeper into. Actually, let's just talk about it now. Dad, what do you think about the Packers' approach of having them switch off? I thought Bakhtiari looked very good when he was in there.
I thought it was good. I was a little surprised that, I didn't hear about, I don't think I heard that until game time about doing the switching back and forth thing. But I think he continued through the end of the game. He didn't miss his turns. So that would suggest he made it through the game without any setbacks.
Yeah, fingers crossed at least. We'll see how it feels throughout the week. A lot for the Lions one. For the Lions one, he made it through that game fine, and then it swelled up on him in practice. He made it through the amount he was going to play. He stopped short, but the whole team stopped short.
Yeah, I was a little unclear though, because at one point they said that he did sustain a new injury or re-injury during that Lions game.
Well, he made it.
I don't know how long it took to, but I think the big picture of what you mean is that for him, it's always been how the knee reacts after activity.
Exactly, and so
we'll
seems
see
like
if it swells up and stiffens up or not.
Yeah, I would say we're not out of the woods yet, but I think overall, for the information we have now, today was a very good success for Bakhtiari. He played well, I thought. I have to go back and rewatch the game to really be sure of that, but it felt like he was playing pretty well out there. Felt like he was moving well in the run game, which I feel like was the most important thing. I had a little less worry about pass protection than I did run game, just for the movement aspect of it. I thought he was moving well, but that was, I think, the other biggest news of this game is that Bakhtiari played, which is just, it's awesome. It's great for him. It's great for the Packers. They need him. They need him badly. You just hope
Shut up the haters.
Yeah, you hope this is step one of the progress back, and that he's just keeps stacking good days. Yeah, but that is the injury report for the Packers. Thankfully, not too much to go with there. You just hope that Jair and Myers are okay and Bakhtiari continues to progress. But, Dad, let's move into our game breakdown and start with the offense. Do you want to start with your... Well, let me just explain to any new listeners we have out there. We often do this game breakdown as a bit more of a deep dive analytically and statistically into kind of how the Packers played, and just more detailed analysis, essentially, not always statistics. But we're going to start with one good thing and one bad thing we each have, essentially, for the offense, and then we'll do one good thing and bad thing for the defense. And then if the special teams was notable, we'll do a couple notes on that. But, Dad, do you want to start with your good or bad thing for the offense, whichever you want to go with?
It seems I'm taking liberties with the word one. Good thing or one bad thing. I may have more than one.
A few good things or bad things. You will. We're going to have a series. Volume 1.
Volume 1.
Bad thing on offense, Volume 1.
One plus or minus several. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that I really liked how they used Dobbs in this game, and that they took they took some sort of intermediate, maybe not really downfield shots, but some intermediate shots with him. And they said before the game that he was going to possibly get a lot of usage, and he did. He had the most targets. He had 8 targets and 8 catches, which are both the most for any individual player this season in any game.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up with 73 yards and a touchdown as well. Not the most yards per game. I think that's Watkins from last game with a 93.
He was the best. I don't think it's a stretch to say he was the best Packers offensive player today.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a stretch to say that at all. He
looked really. He was
the
moving
offense was
smoothly
working.
Yeah.
When they gave him the ball, and he was winning deep. He was winning short with yards after catch, and he's winning in the middle of the field. You want to see them maybe take a few more deep shots to him, but
I would like to see more, even intermediate shots and deep shots. But we'll get to that.
I would just love to see him get the ball more. I mean, 8 targets is pretty good, though. You can't be too mad at 8 targets.
And they still spread the ball around. Like, they had 7 different players with catches. I think last week they had 8. But considering that they were missing a couple of their receivers, that's understandable. I liked what Cobb did with the ball in his hands today.
Cobb looked
yards
good.
After catch looked fantastic on both of those catches.
They need to give him the ball more. He only had 2 catches, right?
Down the field he had the 2 catches for, I don't remember how many. I don't know what the yardage is off the top of my head, but
I think he had 2 for 40.
He made them count.
Yeah, I think he had 2 for 40. Let me double check that really quick. 2 for 57 with a long of 40.
Yeah, so he was moving with the ball in his hand. Looked really good.
But yeah, I think those receivers played very well. But I would say for the most part the receivers looked pretty good, even if the offense didn't look good.
Right. It was sort of it was interesting. There were a few parts that looked good on offense in the game, and then there were a lot of sort of segments that looked really bad. But then
I would say it's more. I would say it was more than segments.
But it
was a lot more than segments.
It was more than half the game.
And we'll talk about that. I think
on the whole, it actually doesn't look that ugly. So the last thing I wanted to say was about that. So the Packers offense had 6.88 yards per dropback and 7.29 yards per attempt for the game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, of course, averaging some really good play at the beginning and some really crappy play after that. But those numbers would have finished 6th and 4th, respectively, last year for Football Outsiders. So that's actually a pretty good overall output, even though it was very uneven. So let's now you can go to your good things.
And I think my bad thing's kind of the same as yours, so maybe I'll just take the time here to go good straight into bad, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, why don't you go back to back with your good things and bad things, and then I'll circle back to my bad things.
Good thing, much like the game itself, the game itself went good to bad. I'm going to go good to bad just describing how I felt about the Packers offense. And the good thing was essentially the first 2 drives. The first 2 drives were excellent. The first drive was 10 plays, 75 yards, 6 minutes and 4 seconds. Second drive was 12 plays, 71 yards, 6 minutes and 49 seconds. And scored a touchdown on both drives, up early, up 14-3, feeling very good. All the momentum. Third drive comes, and they're driving down the field. They've gone 70 yards. They're at the goal line. And then Aaron Jones fumbles at the goal line. He gets hit hard by Vita Vea dropping into coverage. Don't ask me why Vita Vea was dropping into coverage, but it worked, so whatever, I guess. And then the whole thing fell apart. After those 3 drives, where they averaged 9.3 plays, 68.6 yards per drive, 10.7 yards per dropback, so every time they went to pass, 10.7 yards. It just all fell apart. The next 8 drives, 3 plays, 8 yards, punt. 4 plays, 7 yards, punt. 3 plays, 6 yards, punt. 3 plays, 5 yards, interception. 4 plays, 18 yards, punt. 3 plays, 1 yard, punt. 4 plays, 8 yards, punt. 8 plays, 37 yards, chance to ice away the game, punt. And they're averaging, in those 8 drives after the Jones fumble, 4 plays per drive, 11.3 yards, and no points after those first 3 drives. Like, that is atrocious. And the main problem with what was happening in these drives is the passing game just fell apart. They went from, like I said, 10.7 yards per dropback over those first 3 drives, moving the ball, getting chunk plays to Cobb, Dobbs, etc., down all the way to 3.85 yards per dropback. So every time they went back to pass, less than 4 yards on average. And that's over 20 dropbacks and 12 carries. You know, the run game in general was also a lot of a problem. Even on the drives that were like going well, 5 carries for 15 yards on the first drive, 4 carries for 11 yards on the second drive. and overall just 2.83 yards a carry for the game. But the real difference between those first 3 drives when they were moving the ball and the other 8 drives where they could not buy a first down was that the passing game went from generating some explosive plays, moving the ball, being efficient, being on time, to just can't figure anything out. Pressure is in your face. You're dumping it off short. You're getting 3 yards a pass. You're stuck in third downs. And the big thing actually also was they started 5 for 5 on third down and then went 0 of 9, 0 of 8 the rest of the way.
They went 0 of 8, and then did they convert?
They got one. They got one at the end.
After missing 8 in a row or 9 in a row, then they got one.
Yeah, but so pretty much, just to summarize it, is the main bad things were the run game, the whole game, the passing game after the first 3 drives, and specifically the situational offense on third down after the first 3 drives. All horrendous. This game should not have been this close. They should have smacked Tampa. And the fact that their offense started hot, something bad happened, the turnover, and they just turtled. This happens way too often for the Packers and is, I think, a major cause of concern for me at least. How do you feel about it? Because it's kind of concerning to me.
Yeah, I think what happened when I was just watching the game, the thing that was just driving me crazy. If we want to finish going into this part rather than getting on to, we can go back and visit some of the other good things that you had.
I think let's just tackle this because I think this is, to me at least, this is the most important.
What I was
thing.
watching, and I need to go back and rewatch, is they had all these like 2 and 3 yard passes. And I look at some of these.
I mean, the stats bear it out. They didn't throw the ball downfield at all in the second half, except for that slot shot to Lazard on the last drive or second to last drive of the game.
And they kept I'm looking at after, let's see, after we got the fumble back from them. Well, I guess there's an 8-yard game, then incomplete. And then in the second half, our first possession, 3-yard pass for our first play that counted. That wasn't negated by a penalty. Then the next possession, 3-yard pass on first, 3-yard pass on second. So all these pitiful little short throws that weren't going anywhere. They kept having these 2 and 3 yard plays on first down and second down.
Yeah.
And so they were left with these,
But they were getting down to 3rd and 4. They just could not get anything on 3rd and 4.
Yeah, or 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 4. But every play was this little dump down so that they didn't open up. So when they're dumping it down, because they weren't opening it up by at least trying to go downfield, there was no yard after catch anymore.
I don't understand why they just
weren't
turtle.
Getting the players in motion, as they're moving across the field, kind of set up the momentum for a yard after catch, and because they just abandoned the intermediate and downfield throws, they were kind of stuck where the defense is just crowding the line of scrimmage, so there's no run, and these short passes just die immediately. Well, everybody is there.
But didn't it feel like? It felt like to me, the big change was Bowles was bringing a lot more pressure after those 3 drives. And so they couldn't hold the ball to take deep shots, but they also weren't punishing the pressure. Like they were getting the crap blitzed out of them. And they were showing through the broadcast the entire game that Rodgers does amazing versus the blitz. Except for against Tampa, he is terrible against the blitz for some reason. Doesn't make any sense. Todd Bowles is a very underrated head coach, underrated defensive mind in general. But it seemed like they couldn't handle the pressure because theoretically you should be able to get. I know it's harder said than done, but theoretically you should be able to get the ball out quickly when you're getting blitzed like this, and you should be able to break one. Or not even necessarily break one, but get some yards after the catch. There should be someone open, but they were just unable to do anything. And I feel like Rodgers kind of turtled a little bit. The whole offensive staff kind of turtled. They got so less aggressive just because this turnover happened. And this happens a lot where they'll be completely chugging, look unstoppable on offense. Everything is flowing. It's rhythm. It's beautiful. It's art. And then slam the brakes because something terrible happened, and they go into security lockdown, and they lock themselves in the building because it's security lockdown, and they throw away the key, and they're locked up in there. I think
they lose aggression, and we can debate who's to blame, but then the whole offense just kind of falls apart.
Yeah, and it's
they just can't get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
They're just 1 3-and-out after another.
And that's what it was in the second half.
There's a little bit of pressure. Then they got a couple more chunk plays.
Didn't it feel like they were playing? But didn't it feel like they were playing not to lose for?
Absolutely.
The entire last 3 quarters.
It's like they went into a prevent offense halfway through the second quarter.
They were hanging on by their fingernails to that lead for 3 whole quarters. That is one of the most stressful regular season games I've ever had to watch. They were just like fingernails drilled into the side of the wall, hanging on for dear life, praying that they could make it out of there with an 8-point lead for 3 quarters. Like they were just like, please, 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 can this be enough? And it was, but I don't think it usually will be. I don't think that's going to be how it works usually. You're not always going to face a team without their 3 best receivers.
Yeah, you've got to be willing to take more risks, even after something goes bad on a drive.
And it's just frustrating because, yes, they won, which is awesome. Love beating Tampa. Love beating Tom Brady. But these are issues that have existed the duration of the time under LaFleur. And LaFleur is an excellent coach. All coaches have flaws. But you would like to see them kind of improve on this stuff. And it feels like it's the same. This flaw has been the same flaw with the Packers for over 3 years now. And it costs them games, and it costs them important games. And it's just frustrating to watch them completely fold in on themselves and tighten up that hard to the point where they can't move the ball at all. After you show us you can. You show us you can move the ball. Obviously, the defense makes an adjustment. Stay aggressive and make an adjustment back. Don't just pray you can hold on.
I've thought about for a while that LaFleur is great at setting up a system, designing plays, making a game plan, developing a culture.
Sequencing plays, I think, too, within a drive. Excellent at.
Yes. So now that. Does he have a weakness at figuring out how to change something in the middle of a game to adjust to what the other team is doing? Off the top
of your head, can you name a time they were down at half and won? I'm sure there has been one, but none come to mind, at least.
So this is what I've thought. I wondered for a while. It's is this a weakness of LaFleur as a coach? The one weakness that I can really think of that may be the case.
It sucks that we're talking about this after a win because we won.
But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on this. But that's another possibility.
It's just frustrating because I think this game should not have been this close. They showed us that they can be a dominant offense, and then it seemed like they just chose not to be for the rest of the game.
But besides it, if you take out how well the Packers are playing at the beginning, where it's this might be a blowout, that would be awesome. I can relax the rest of the day. Before the game started, and you're thinking,
yes. I thought there was no way they won this game going into it.
14-12 is right around in the wheelhouse of where I thought the final score was going to be.
No, I think
my prediction was 17-13.
Well, I predicted we were going to lose, and the thing is, if you will make a very good point. If you look at it through the lens of how I felt before the game, it's great. I thought we were going to get curb stomped. I thought we were going to lose badly. I thought we would maybe score a touchdown. I thought it was going to be really bad. I think it's important to keep that kind of frame of reference. But I will say, when you look at, thank you, I appreciate it. When you look at how they looked early and then how they just chose not to do that anymore, it's incredibly frustrating because you see the ceiling of this team And I know it's only 3 games in. That's also a very important thing to note. So whole new offense, new players, people missing. First game back for Bakhtiari, second game back for Elton. I know. But it's just frustrating for them to dominate and then not. And it just seemed like a switch flips as soon as something goes wrong, like it always has.
Yeah. Now, allow me to retort. Another way to look at it is that we stole this game by getting off to a hot start on the road.
That's true. That is the
if you want to look at it
point of view.
A little positive spin, that we got off to a hot start and that allowed us to steal this game.
That's true.
On the road at their place.
It is a theft.
In nasty conditions where we always struggle.
That's true. This is not the kind of game the Packers would normally win. And just to kind of emphasize that, according to Matt Schneidman, the Packers were previously 3-27 when they scored less than 14 points since 2008. So, not bad to take one from Tampa Bay on the road against Tom Brady. So,
the further I get from actually watching the game, the better I feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. The result is awesome. They were not supposed to win this game. It's just it's a frustrating win, but it is a win. But anyway, let's. Do you want to move on to the defensive side of the ball, because I think that'll be a little more fun? Okay. Do you want to start? You want to start bad or good? How do you? I kind of want to end on a good note. Do you want to start with the bad, and then we'll talk about the good for a little longer, or how do you want to do it?
Okay, so let's get on to defense. You want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay, I'll start off with my bad things. I think some of our bad things might be similar.
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll just I'll sprinkle in my thoughts.
Is that at the end, that last play, coordination broke down in the defense. It was like they weren't even prepared for the snap at the edge of the 2-minute warning. They're running around not knowing who's on what assignment. I think necessarily ready for the ball to be snapped.
And just as a bit of an overview, we'll go into the earlier part of the game when we talk about the good for the defense. But the defense was very rock solid the entire game. And then, as my dad and I are about to talk about, so that we can end on a good note, the bad is that last drive was so damn horrible. They allowed 13 plays, 89 yards in 2 minutes and 50 seconds, Dad. How does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? It makes me feel awful.
Yeah, I think they kind of went into it. Every fan hates, like the prevent mode. It drives everybody bonkers for fans of every team. Forever.
You know what we say about prevent
50 years.
Say about prevent defense, that it prevents you from winning.
But there were a couple other small issues I had that the defense, I think, had a few struggles the rest of the game. I think they didn't get consistent pressure on Brady, despite the weekend offensive line.
Can we talk about the prevent defense just a little bit more, because I think it's important.
Well, okay, I didn't have much to say, so you can come in with your prevent defense thoughts now.
Yeah, I mean, when are NFL defensive coordinators going to learn? Like, they were playing prevent defense with 4 minutes left. Like, this isn't a minute. This isn't 45 seconds. There were 4 minutes on the clock, and they had, I think, 2 of their timeouts. What are we preventing?
They had all the time they needed.
They didn't, play defense.
The idea of prevent defense is you are making them trade time for yards. But if they have plenty of time, then it's a totally wasted exercise.
And they were playing prevent defense and letting them go out of bounds. Like, at least keep them in the middle. Like, even if it was a minute and a half, they probably still would have made it down the field.
I do have in my notes, one of the things is that still, I think, like, too many pass catchers running open. It wasn't only at the end of the game, and that often they were near the sidelines. Like, was it Cameron Brate running wide open on the right-hand side, or Cole Beasley going open on the left side, where they were able to get
just complete coverage busts.
Receivers on a couple, like 3 or 4 occasions, even before the 2-minute drill.
Yeah, just a complete coverage bust. And they got the ball, so they got the ball at 3 minutes and 4 seconds. And they had it down to the Green Bay 22 at 131 or 126. So in a little over a minute and a half, they drove it from the Tampa Bay 11 to the Green Bay 22, which just can't happen. I mean, if you look at the percent chance to win, at the start of that drive, the Packers had a 95% chance to win.
What was it down to by the end?
It got down to I mean, I'm surprised it didn't drop further, honestly. It didn't feel like this to me, but it dropped down to 78%. They lost 17% odds of winning, which is 1 in 5,
because that drive couldn't win it.
Yes, they needed the 2-point conversion. But that's after they scored the touchdown. Once they scored the touchdown, it was 78%. Like the Packers had a chance to win before the penalty. So before the delay of game, but after the touchdown, it had been a 17% swing.
You know exactly why that is. A 2% try is only good half the time, and then it's a 50-50 proposition
overtime.
after that.
Yep.
In overtime. So they only had a quarter chance of winning even after the touchdown.
Didn't feel like it. I'm going to tell you right now, it did not feel like it.
Based on league-wide probability.
Don't you agree that like if they scored that 2-point conversion, they are winning that game?
They're winning the coin toss.
They're winning the coin toss. The Packers are not getting the ball back.
And they're going to march down the field and get a touchdown.
Although that's not entirely fair to the defense. Let's talk positives about the defense.
Let's flip over to. Did you get all of your criticisms of the defense in first?
My only criticism was the prevent defense last possession. Everything else, defense, stand up, because you are the guys that won this game. They held Tom Brady at home. I know he had limited weapons. Let's preface all of this with 1, 2, 3. Three of his top 4 guys were out. What?
But you know what he said?
What did he say?
Cole Beasley. I've been throwing to this guy for 20 years.
That was very funny. Yes, he is a small Wes Welker clone. He is a small Wes Welker, Julian Edelman clone.
Welker, Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola. I mean, how many of these guys are there?
Yeah, and it's...
who always seem to run open on slants.
How are these guys always open? I don't understand.
I feel like these guys are always breaking wide open across the middle on some kind of quick slant.
And they're always covered by a linebacker. It's like there's some hidden written rule that Belichick unlocked once upon a time that like you have to guard these small slot receivers with a linebacker, and then ipso facto we lose. But I think yes, let's kind of.
But you wanted to go on to your good points about the defense.
Let's talk about the defense, because the defense was pretty good. I think
it was very good.
I think yeah, it was very good. Let's start with yours, because you kind of have a bit more of an in-depth breakdown of the drive-by-drive of how they did, and then I'll talk a little bit about third down and some of the individual players.
Okay, so a couple of things I want to just shout out to the run defense.
Yes.
There were a lot of what you call a win for the defense, where it's like less than 3 yards, not enough to like work its way for a first down.
Yeah, less than 3 yards
or
a
first down. They only gave up 34 yards on 14 carries for 2.4 yards per carry. So we were talking about how much trouble the Packers had running.
Yeah.
The Bucs were worse.
Yep. In more favorable running conditions. When you're down, it's easier to run.
Yeah. Right, because the other team's playing light boxes to guard against the pass.
That's a great point on the run defense.
And then for the Tampa Bay drives overall, like through the bulk of the game, so they had like the first drive where they went 10 plays for 48 yards and a field goal. And then the last drive where they got 84 yards and a touchdown. In the 10 yards in between, they only had one drive for more than 5 plays and only 2 drives for more than 20 yards.
I mean, if you take out that last drive, this is a masterclass. This is a masterclass if you take out that last drive.
Yeah. So the average yards per drive for Tampa for the game, 23.75. That would have been last in 2021 for the season on average. And then in pass defense, they only gave up 5.57 yards per drop back, which for a defense would have been third last year. And by the way, Green Bay was fourth last year. I was surprised to look that up in yards per drop back. And they gave up 6.12 yards per attempt, which would have been about 12th. So a little bit, just above the middle of the pack in yards per
I feel that yards per drop back I feel yards per dropback is a better stat because it does take into account sacks.
Right. So one thing for the listeners out there, the yards per dropback are pass attempts plus sack, being that the sack is a passing play.
A called pass play. A called passing play.
Couldn't get the pass off in time before they got tackled. So it also accounts for the net passing yards, so the yards lost for the in the sacks.
Mm-hmm. And I
so
think
those were sort of my main takeaways for how the defense performed.
Yeah, and I think situationally, just to tack on to what you were saying, and keep in mind all of this without Jair Alexander.
He made it through less than the first possession.
Yeah, just a quick thing. Keyshawn Nixon played out of his damn mind on every facet of the football game.
Man, we are
special
so lucky
teams
we added
and
him
defense.
We got him for a song too. Again, another.
Yeah, he's good. He can play in the slot. He forced that second forced fumble.
Right, he punched the ball out. That
one of the most important plays of the game.
Great coverage down the middle, deep middle on. Is that Perriman? Gage, the one at the.
I have to rewatch the game. I have to rewatch it.
I can't remember who the receiver was, but he was right there with him, and made it impossible to reel in that play, that pass. So he played well.
Overall. We're going to talk about this. We'll talk about this later when we talk more. We'll talk more about Keyshawn Nixon, but the Packers might have the two best gunners in the league, in my opinion. Hot take. Not that hot, though, because they're insane. But Keyshawn Nixon, just a shout-out, he stepped in for Jair. They moved Rasul Douglas to the outside, so Stokes and Douglas played on the outside, and Keyshawn Nixon played on the inside. But just overall, the Packers' defense was so excellent outside of that first and last drive. I mean, third down defense, they held them to 2 of 11 with a 1, and they were 1 for 1 on fourth. But so 3 of 12 in shutting down opponent drives. Other individual players who I thought played really well that we can maybe just touch on really quick. Quay Walker had a really good game, I thought. I thought Campbell had a really good game. I thought Kenny and Gary had really good games. I thought Stokes had a really good game. I don't think I even heard his name once on the broadcast. I thought Amos and Seth. I honestly think individually, most of the Packers secondary was really good, and then half the D-line was really good, and both the linebackers were good.
We did struggle. I was looking a little bit on. We also struggled a little bit on covering Gage.
Gage kind of, but the thing is, all of Gage's stuff was this underneath, and they didn't rally as well as you would have hoped they would. I feel like, but everything felt like underneath soft zone. Like Gage was getting that.
I thought they tackled guys pretty quickly after the catches. I don't think there was that much.
The tackling was better this week than last week.
Yes, there were not. I was watching that, especially in watching the first half, 3 quarters. There are not that many missed tackles. They're bringing people down pretty quickly. Yeah, just that more that Gage was caught 12 of his 13 targets.
Yeah, that's a bit gross. He did kind of pop off a little bit.
Yeah, and then the pass completion percentages were crazy high for a long time.
Yeah, but
as well. But I don't think they were producing much.
But the reason the Packers won was their defense. I don't think
Absolutely.
That's... Yeah.
No, it's not even close.
And
though I should say, I don't know if you had more to say about the defense yet.
I think let's talk a little bit more about the defense. Let's give them a little shine. Because what did they have? They had 3 sacks on the day?
3 sacks on the day and 2 fumble recoveries.
It felt
Gary
like they were getting
third straight game of the sack.
They forced 2 turnovers. It felt like they were back there a lot. It felt like they were making life hard for Tom Brady, especially Kenny. I thought Kenny was, at least early in the game, abusing the offensive line, which is important to note because he was limited this week with a groin injury, and we talked a little bit about in our pregame pod whether or not that might limit him like it had in the past when he had a groin injury 2 years ago.
Yeah, I wonder if he was getting a little
gassed out there.
Gassed by the end of the game.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't blame him. It's hot as hell. And I thought, man, I know he's probably not ready. I would love to see some more Wyatt. I'm not entirely sure about his snap count this game.
I think they're just taking him slow like they did with Gary his rookie year.
Yeah,
right?
But he's an older rookie.
This is the thing they do.
So
they did it with Dylan. They did it with Gary. They tried to do it with Jenkins, except he was
It was just too good.
He was too good, and then
Lane Taylor got hurt.
Lane Taylor got hurt, but
Yeah.
they were easing him in, and so they. But for Dylan and Gary, they basically eased him in the whole season.
Yeah, I mean,
so
he's a 24-year-old rookie though, so he's kind of on the older side.
Is don't give up hope yet because they've done this with rookies before. That's all.
And I mean, just to look at the defense again. I mean, they had a stretch in the middle of this game between those two. If you don't count the first and the last, which I know is kind of, if you don't count their two best drives, they had 1, 2. I mean, they had 1, 2, 3, 4 3-and-outs, and then one drive of 4 plays allowed, 2 drives of 5 plays allowed, and then 1 drive of 6 plays allowed. It did feel like after that. The one thing I will say for the defense also that I think they struggled with is I think they really struggled with the tempo and the heat. I don't know if that's that they're struggling with the tempo because of the heat, or if they're struggling with the tempo and the heat exacerbated that. Because when Tampa sped it up, they were not only did they look tired, they looked confused. There were guys open on that last drive a lot of the times because Tampa was speeding them up, and then people were not sure where to go. There was one play where Nixon and Quay Walker both came in, and then Lenny just went to the flat, and they were not guarding Leonard Fournette at all on the last drive. At all. He was so open on every play.
The other thing I noticed, I think they may have caught them, with that up-tempo. They wanted to sub out and couldn't. I did notice that
other teams are going to do that.
If they're able to be successful enough to continue to go up-tempo.
Other good teams.
Think they also got
good teams are going to do that.
Yes, but it looked like on a couple of Tampa's more successful drives, they had their backup edge rushers in. I have to go back and watch the tape and see if that if that holds up to scrutiny. If I look at enough, on on every play.
Yeah, I mean, I saw
difference.
Garvin.
But I noticed Garvin and
Enagbare was out
there
there
on that last drive.
Yeah,
I saw Enagbare in there.
But the one thing I did notice though, is they weren't just alternating 2 and 2. They weren't doing Preston and Gary, and then they weren't doing just Preston and Gary and then Enagbare and Garvin. I saw Garvin out there with Gary. I saw Preston out there with Enagbare. I saw every combination essentially of the two of them, of the two edge rushers, and then a few with multiple edge rushers on the field. But I think that's a good idea. I would rather. I have
noticed that in other games as well, as opposed to last year where they just had two.
They just said
teams were going to rest both of our starters at the same time.
They said, "Kenny, you better get home because these guys are not going to."
So I do prefer the strategy where they keep one of their frontline guys out there, and not take them both off the field at the same time. And I think they've been doing less of that this year.
Yeah,
and I think it's a good idea.
I think so too.
So one thing we haven't talked about yet.
Special teams?
Right. Special teams.
Special teams.
Special we-fence.
We-fence, yes, not special teams. We-fence.
But it was mostly good. And maybe I'll get the bad thing out of the way first. And that was the punt play from Tampa's own end zone, where 2 separate penalties probably cost them an easy 3 points at least.
Yeah.
If they didn't run if they didn't run into the punter or get blocked into the punter, or however you want to take that, they had the ball on the 32.
That's what I was going to say. Is it felt like
field goal range.
That's what I was going to say though. It felt like that call was kind of ticky-tacky, and so was the block in the back. Honestly, to me, I know I'm biased, but I thought they were kind of ticky-tack. And you want your defense to be aggressive there. You want them to go for the block.
But that was just a huge difference between we're in range to get points and make it,
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
That they would need another score. And we lost 30-some yards, 33 yards, or 38 yards, something like that. So that we almost had a score in the bag.
There was that. And then there was Amari fair catching one that he really shouldn't have. He had room
near the very end. It's was it the last punch he caught?
I was talking with some people about this. I am okay with him fair catching a few that he shouldn't, if it means he never doesn't fair catch one that he should. I am okay with having
gets blown up.
I am okay. I am okay with having some like false positives if the positive is a fair catch in this instance. If it means you have some like false like if you don't have false negatives where you don't call a fair catch and you get rocked and fumble the ball. Like, I would much rather you just call fair catch.
I was wondering when it happens, like, I wonder if they told him to do this because they don't want to risk a turnover deep in their own territory with a lead this late in the game.
I wouldn't blame them, but we were talking about the positives of Weefence. So
let's
anyway,
go. Yeah, so there's
Rudy Ford and Keyshawn Nixon are the best gunners in the league. I am sipping the Kool-Aid. I am here for it. They are them. They are them.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, like, you know what? To get good coverage and prevent big returns,
it's a whole nother first down.
All you really need are two good gunners.
Yeah.
Good gunners.
The difference
and the other guys run around the background have almost nothing to do.
Exactly. It's great. I love it. Because if you're forcing a fair catch, the difference between 0 yards and a 12-yard return is a whole set of downs. It's a whole first down the offense has to get.
The number of fair catches they're forcing is awesome.
Yeah, and that tackle by the sideline by Ford, I mean, the Weefence was showing out. I mean, Pat O'Donnell, shout out to him because he put 5 of 7 punts he put 5 of 7 punts inside the 20.
And somebody, I think Packers Twitter said that that's tied for the most punts inside the 20 for Green Bay since 1976.
I mean, isn't it lovely?
That was when I was still in elementary school. That's how far back that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, it's such a difference because I think something that a lot of people have talked about, specifically Andy Herman of the Pack-A-Day podcast, has talked about, like, hey, if you're going to be a defense-first team, the special teams can't be a tire fire because then they'll have good field position every time and the defense, like, there's nothing the defense can do. And so far, I mean, shout out Bisaccia, shout out the guys that they brought in specifically to fix this in Nixon and Ford and O'Donnell and Levitt. The Weefence has been good. Like, not even just not passable, good.
Yeah, since you brought it up. Yeah, so Tampa Bay, O'Donnell had 7 punts.
Mm-hmm.
Tampa only was able to return 3 of them at all. 4 of them didn't get returned at all. And those 3 returns were only 8.7 yards. So that's, if you average over all the punts, it's not much at all. And plus the one they pinned at the 2. And then Tampa's starting position, I went through all this because I remember before the game somebody talked about their starts. So it was like 20. So Tampa started at the 25-yard line, 23, 25, 25, 13, 21, 2, 47 after I think the last turnover, 11, 14, 25, and 11 for an average starting field position of the 20-yard line. Now, and per Football Outsiders, they had been basically tied for first for an average starting field position of the 33-yard line.
Tampa was?
They had like the best starting position on average for the season. And so we held them 13 yards behind their normal starting position. So that's a combination.
That's the difference. That could be the difference in a game. It was a 2-point game.
But one thing that was interesting, I wasn't intending to look at this, and I was a little surprised that Green Bay came in actually in second place for
starting field position?
Starting field position against.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying, yes.
So this is in line with what they've been doing so far this season. So
you love to see
the season coming into today, their opponents have been starting at the 22. So
and the Weefence being good is just such a. I think it's important, and it'll help the defense so much for a team that's offense is going to struggle. Like
we want no more short fields, no more short fields.
Exactly, but I think one thing I want to talk about before we wrap up here is the play of the game. Let's talk a little bit about that 2-point conversion. How, I was so tight. I was so tense.
And I feel like
also,
there's so many times where I feel like a 2-point conversion was like a guarantee.
Yes. Well, you know why it wasn't a guarantee? It's Tom Brady doesn't know how to count. Tom Brady does not know how to count.
It's fourth down now, right?
Tom Brady doesn't know how to count. So if you guys didn't see, Tom Brady took a delay of game because he was trying to change the play. So normally they're at the 2-yard line. for 2-point conversion. And
Tampa was out of timeouts.
Tampa's out of timeouts. They're scrambling around. And then Brady, with 8 seconds left, is like trying to change the whole play. Takes a delayed game. It goes back to the 7. I mean, I think that alone is I think the difference in the game. Do you know how one play from the 7 versus one play from the 2, the difference is astronomical. You can no longer run. You can't run the ball anymore if you're at the 7. It has to be a pass.
Yeah, and they were going to run. I think they're going to hand it off to Lenny.
They were going to run it straight up our throats. Like, I don't know if I mean, there's no way of knowing now. I'm going to say obviously now. Of course, we would have stopped them. But Devondre Campbell with the play of the game. That is our first team All-Pro linebacker smacking the ball out of the air. Which apparently,
did you see? He said he knew it was coming.
Well, did you see that Rodgers said he saw something on the Jumbotron before the play and went and told LaFleur that he saw it on the Jumbotron? He wouldn't tell him what it is. Hopefully he says on McAfee this week. But that gave away like what Tampa was doing, and then that got relayed in. Oh,
I see. It was just noticed on the sideline.
Yeah, Rodgers said he noticed something. Rodgers said, quote, I think the quote was, sometimes the Jumbotron shows things it's not supposed to, end quote. Which I'm guessing like he saw, like he could read the lips of like a defensive coordinator or saw them make the call.
You don't think it was just the alignment?
Maybe it was the alignment, but I feel like you could see that without the Jumbotron.
Yeah. The other thing, though, is interesting. If you were to look at the play, though, Campbell make this awesome play. Deflect
Savage
the ball.
Is right there.
Savage is in position.
Right there, yes.
He's on it, too.
Mm-hmm. And it's just great that they didn't buckle down on the drive, but they buckled down when they had to. They did what they needed to do.
Yep.
But I guess let's kind of wrap it up. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So do the wrap up, which is kind of, I don't know if you have anything more for your closing thoughts. So are we into closing thoughts now?
Just that 2-point conversion aged me about a decade.
So after that, I had to go and do a little walk around the neighborhood.
Yeah,
unwind.
Walk it off.
Let the stress, let the heart rate come down, ease up. So I put on some music, just shuffling through my playlist, and the song that comes on is Gil Scott Heron, rest in peace. Shout out. The revolution will not be televised, and
that's a good song.
In my head, I've got the overtime will not be televised. The overtime will not be televised. The overtime will not be televised. The overtime will not be televised because. There's not going to be no overtime.
Thank you very much. What was it?
Did you see what they're head while I'm decompressing?
Did you see what they're promoting next week Sunday Night Football? Mahomes Brady with what song it is?
Yes, Neil.
Old man, take
Neil
a look
Young.
at my life.
I saw that. Old man. Yes,
that's so freaking funny. But anyways, we're starting to lose the plot a little bit. We're getting deep into this episode. Dad, do you want to just kind of wrap it up with your general thoughts of the game?
So. What I just say, what I brought to the final picture, actually, looking at the sum of the parts, was that it was overall a pretty good outing. It was interesting. So we had, if you go in granularly, like that sum seemed to be more than the individual parts. But the overall performance, I think we got what we wanted out of there. We're set up better for the rest of the season. We won a game that a lot of people preseason might have put down as a loss. And that is going to be nice for the rest of the week.
Exactly. It's way better to win than to lose. These are my final closing thoughts. Way better to win than to lose. Ugly win better than a pretty loss. Results in A+. This is big for the tiebreaker in the NFC. If you escape with a win, you still get a win. But anyways, thank you guys so much for coming and listening to our postgame. We'll be doing a pregame on Thursday night for the Packers' Sunday afternoon matchup against the New England Patriots. We'll be keeping you updated. Mac Jones has a high ankle sprain, so he might not even play. We might be playing against Brandon Hoyer on Sunday afternoon. So keep an eye on Twitter and keep an eye on us at Father Son Packer on Twitter. We'll be tweeting through all that news. Father Son Packers podcast on YouTube. Come check us out. You can find us on any podcast platform of choice. But until next time, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.